In this episode of Ideas, I talk with Shama Hyder about her book, marketing, and her best piece of advice. Here's our conversation. All right, today's guest is Shama Hyder. She is a web and TV personality, a best-selling author, and the CEO of the Marketing Zen Group, a global online marketing and digital PR company. She has a new book out, Momentum. Shama, thank you so much for coming on the show.
A pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Is there anything you'd like to add to the intro I just gave that may give listeners more insight into your journey?
Oh, it would be a very long intro indeed.
Well, go ahead. Anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I wear a lot of hats now. It's funny, I got my start as a graduate student doing my thesis on Twitter when it had a few thousand users. And today, I run a 30-person web marketing digital PR firm named Marketing Zen. I've got 2 books, The Zen of Social Media Marketing, going into its 4th edition, which is used as a textbook to teach social media in a lot of college classes around the world. And then Momentum, which is a guide to marketing in the digital age, and that just came out a month ago. So yeah, that's the journey in sort of a nutshell.
The Marketing Zen Group, you mentioned that. Tell us more about your company.
Yeah, we started out as a social media consulting firm and very quickly grew as we saw market demand shift and clients ask for different things. So, today we work with fast-growing startups, a lot of middle market companies, but essentially companies that want to be household names or recognize industry thought leaders. And we do that through digital marketing.
Your book, Momentum, went into a lot of detail, like you said, about social media. It gives people a great framework for people not only wanting to start social media, but build their social media accounts. Go ahead and tell listeners what your book is about exactly and where your expertise goes in the book.
Yeah, it's funny. It's hard to tell the Momentum story without speaking a little bit to the Zen story. I wrote The Zen of Social Media Marketing originally as an ebook before it was even picked up by a traditional publisher because there was no other guide to help people to understand social media. There was no practical primer. There was one other book that was very theoretical. And so for me, it was, at all these questions, how could I answer them? What do I guide people to? And in that way, Zen met a need. I never expected it to do as well as it did, which has been, it's always a pleasure. I never considered myself like an author in the traditional sense. I was just writing things as they made sense to me and what, I thought would help people and clients. And so for it to go into its 4th edition and having sold, 50,000 plus copies, it's been a very heartening journey. But, what happens after you write a book like that is the biggest question everybody asks you is, when's your next book coming out? It's so funny, because you're like, I just finished this massive thing and now people want to, but the thing for me was, and a lot of people do write that hot streak as an author, you write a good book, you've got enough momentum, if you will, and you write another book. But for me, I was like, I never wanted to say something that had already been said or I didn't want to add to the clutter. Like if it was already being said in 4 different books, like I didn't want to repeat that. I wanted to make sure that, again, that's the entrepreneur in me, meet a demand that was there. And it took a few years until I started to notice this shift with our clients when I did keynotes with audiences and questions. And it was around kind of this, okay, it's not about the tools anymore. People are, there's resources for that, including Zen. But it's about kind of this broader, understanding the broader principles around marketing in the digital age. What does it mean to market in this ecosystem? What are the principles that can help guide you in that? And hence Momentum was born.
It was a great book, and those two do tie in together. When did Zen come out, your first book?
6 years ago.
I picked it up years ago, I was going to say, but I couldn't remember. It's been 6 years.
Isn't that crazy?
That is.
6 years, and now its 4th edition's coming out, yeah.
Something you mentioned there, that one of the first questions from people is, when is your next book coming out? As an entrepreneur, how important is it for you to celebrate your wins? Or do you find yourself having trouble focusing on your victories and always moving forward? I find that interesting.
Yeah, honestly, it is hard. I'm really grateful that I'm surrounded by great family and friends who celebrate for me and with me, and it forces me to recognize the moment a little bit more, right? But for me, yeah, it's like there's always another mountain. There's always something else I want to do. But it's also the journey is the fun part for me. It's the
Yeah.
process.
Right.
Whatever it culminates in you as success, it's like an aftertaste. It's good, but it's
Yeah.
the fun
Yeah.
stuff, the juicy stuff is really getting there. And there's always something else that I want to work on and do and build. So yeah, I would see like a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, I do have a hard time fully relishing in something before, there's another like higher peak I want to climb or something like that. But again, I'm very lucky. I'm surrounded by family and friends who help keep me very grounded, who I can be just Shama around, and that's a really nice feeling too.
No, that's great. And it's important to not only fall in love with, celebrating, but as you said, falling in love with the process. As an entrepreneur, putting in as much work as we do, you have to fall in love with the process. Wouldn't you agree?
You do. Otherwise, it's a very tedious business if you don't. I mean, you can do it the other way. It's not fun.
Exactly. So, as I read your new book, it seemed like making a plan was made to be a very important topic. Just how important is it to make a marketing plan, and what should be included in a good marketing plan, would you say?
Yeah, so it's funny, when you mention like having a marketing plan, I think the way you talk about it in the book and even as I practice it is more having a marketing framework, right? Because like one of the first principles in the book obviously is agility through analytics. And so I'm a big fan of have goals, know what you want, have platforms that you know your audience appreciates, that's where they're hanging out. But be able to pivot, be flexible, be able to take advantage of opportunities that come your way. And that's important.
Hmm. Yeah, flexibility is so huge. And while we're on the subject of marketing, talking about being flexible, I know that's one mistake that a lot of people make. But what are some other common marketing mistakes you've seen across individuals and companies that you've seen used time and time again that may be useful for listeners so they know to stay away from those?
Yeah, I would say one of the other big mistakes is not being consistent in your efforts. Marketing is not a one shot thing. I mean, if you say, for example, you put in, X amount in 3 months and you expected that return in those 3 months, not how it works. So much of what you do pays off over time. It pays off dividends. Marketing has great ROI, but you have to be consistent and it takes time. And people think just because you could put a tweet out there, things are instant, everything should be, but that's,
Yeah.
just because it can be instant doesn't mean that your results are instant in that way, nor would you want them to be, frankly. I mean, you want something lasting.
Right. And what do you tell your clients as far as how important patience is? Do you drive that home with them? Is that something you spend some time on?
We do, I mean, one of the things I always tell clients when they sign on is listen, you'll see progress right away, not a problem. But just like when you go work out at the gym, right? To do the before and after picture, you got to give it 6 months. You got to give it a year, especially your industry depends on so many factors. So that's not to say that we haven't worked with clients and they've seen, retail sales go up 30% or a Christmas season campaign that, has a 10% increase in millions of dollars of sales. Like, yes, you have that, but the long game, building that brand, building that something lasting, that's different.
Yeah. And that's so important. I mean, patience. Listeners, if you're not seeing results right now, fall in love with the process, understand that it's going to take some time, and just keep putting in the work. But, Shama, where do you see the future of marketing going? Is there some avenues you see marketing taking with virtual reality coming into play? What do you see with those things?
Yeah, it's funny. I think AR is going to be huge. I think virtual reality we kind of skip over, but augmented reality, what we are seeing with Pokemon Go, right, where you see a cartoon creature kind of run across the digital and physical merging. I mean, one of the principles I talk out in the book is integration, and the term is digital, which was coined by Bain Consulting, and it's the merging of digital and physical, and those lines being blurred. And I think marketing becomes a lot more seamless. I think it becomes very contextual. I think it becomes very relevant because marketers and businesses have always want the right customers and customers want to find the right, resources to help them do what they want to do. But it's all that spam that's gotten in the way. So I think in some ways we reduce a lot of that friction. But it also becomes a more competitive place. I mean, just think of, search domination. It's a big part of what we do with our clients is search. And it was so much easier to drive traffic even 2 years ago than it is now, but so many reasons. Increased demand, reduced supply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I like to ask every guest the same question here at the end. What is one last piece of advice you'd give listeners? It could be anything. It could be business. It could be life advice. Anything, really. If you had to give one piece of advice, what would it be?
The one piece of advice that I give and I like giving is learn to be an editor. Learn to be an editor. And I think this is a theme that we've sort of touched on here, Adam. And it's the sense of if you focus on perfection, the world moves way too fast. You want to learn how to make good decisions, feel fast, feel smart, and keep moving forward. And so taking an editor's viewpoint where everything is always in progress, right? Everything is always sort of a beta version. I think that's the attitude you have to take for the new world.
That's great advice there. Last, where can people find your work?
Well, they can certainly find the new book Momentum and Zen of Social Media Marketing on Amazon and bookstores across the country. You can also find two websites, shamahyder.com, which has all my social platforms and a plethora of videos and other resources, and of course our company site, marketingzen.com.
Awesome. Such great advice in this episode. Shama, thank you again for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. I hope you got something out of these ideas. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.